You're going to find today's interview very fascinating. My guest is Arielle Scarcella. She has a huge YouTube channel. She's a content producer, and in our interview describes herself as one of the original lesbians producing content on YouTube, going back about a dozen years. A viewer of mine reached out a while ago and said, hey, I'm not sure if you've heard of Arielle, but she's having conversations with people who see the world differently. I think she'd be a fascinating guest. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, would you be willing to come on the channel of a Christian professor and just talk about faith and culture and have a civil conversation? She instantly replied back and said yes. So we talk a little bit about her views of politics, who she thinks Jesus was and wasn't. We talk about religious liberty. But the big goal is just to have a civil conversation on issues that matter. And I think we accomplished that. So to be honest with you, if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, you might get on my website and find some stuff that bothers you to a degree because I'm a conservative Christian. If you're a conservative Christian and you get on Arielle's channel, you might feel the same. Realize the goal of this is to reach across just two different communities, two different people who see the world differently, and see if we can have a civil conversation. And not only is it civil, it was fun. I learned a ton, and appreciate that Arielle would come on. Now, before you start watching this, last thing, I asked most of the questions because this is on my channel. But as we get to the end, I asked Arielle, I said, hey, if you have any questions for me, think about it, and then you can ask them at the end. And she asked me a fascinating question I didn't see coming, and I gave my best response. So don't tune out before the end, or if you have to, come back to it and don't miss that. And if you value civil conversation and just find this helpful, whether you're a Christian or not, or wherever you're from, please consider sharing it with somebody. Enjoy this conversation. Can a Christian professor and a lesbian YouTuber have a civil conversation? Well, you are about to find out. My guest today is Arielle Scarcella. She is a YouTube rock star. And Arielle, you first came on my radar when one of my viewers said, hey, I've noticed this YouTuber. She has very different beliefs than you have, but she's having civil conversations with people who see the world differently. I bet she'd come on your channel. Couldn't figure out how to do. My high school son is like, dude, just send her a message on Instagram. I was like, that's a good idea. Reached out within an hour. You're like, sure. So yep. Thanks for coming on the show with a Christian professor.
Thank you. Thank you for being a Christian professor. Thank you for living your truth. Even though that's something liberals say. Leftists say. But I don't think I'm a leftist. I think I'm a liberal. I'm a classic liberal. Okay. It's like, let me live my life. Don't tell me how to live my life. Don't take my money. That's it.
Well, we're going to get into
liberal, right?
I'm really interested in just what you believe, why you believe it, your story, your experience.
I am open to you. I am open to the world. I mean, there's very little I shy away from. I don't think there's anything I shy away from, to be honest. But I think you found the right person for this job. We'll just say that.
Well, part of the fun is you're from New York. I'm from California, so that even adds another extra.
We got this going on here, right?
For different reasons. I love it. Well, why just if my audience doesn't know who you are, and I noticed at the time of this interview, you have over 700,000 YouTube subscribers, so clearly you are rocking in that vein. But
you're doing well too. You got 100,000. That's great. That's excellent.
I appreciate that.
It's true.
It's coming along. So if you don't mind, introduce yourself, assuming that probably a decent number of viewers may not be familiar with you.
Yeah. So my name's Arielle. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I'm very much gay. And I've been making videos on YouTube for over 12 years. I'm like the OG lesbian of YouTube.
Wow.
But over the last 3-4 years, I've been like at odds with the more left-leaning political side of the spectrum. And then 2 years ago, I came out as leaving the left, and I talk about mainly culture and politics now. More culture than anything, but how politics affects culture and vice versa. Beforehand, I was talking mainly about like sex education and like being gay and stuff like that. More like comedy, and I'm like, okay, I'm too old for not that you can be too old for comedy, but I was like, I guess I like a wore myself out in that department, and I was like, let me talk about some more controversial stuff, deeper issues, like with people like yourself.
So, if you recall, what were some of the first things that got your attention that made you think, okay, wait a minute, I'm not at home with the left? Like, do you remember an experience or a story or something that happened, or a few of the things that just started to make you that kind of cracked that door open, so to speak?
There was a bunch of things. I would say one of the first things was how they were treating President Trump. And I say this as somebody who didn't vote for him the first time around.
Okay.
I remember I was hanging out with one of my Jewish friends, and I say that specifically because it's important in the conversation, because he's a minority. And I mean, he is a minority, but like, the way the leftists use it. And I remember I was like rolling my eyes about him talking about Trump, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "So why don't you like him?" And I was like, "Well, I just don't." Blah. And he's like, "That's not an answer." And I was like, "Oh, like shit." I was like, "Wait, am I allowed to curse on here? Probably not." I was like, "Wait, why don't I like him?" Like, there's something that I was like, either I was told to not like him or I was convinced, but I don't have an actual reason. That doesn't make sense. It was a red flag for me. So that was like the first red flag, that I was being conditioned to think a certain way without even realizing why.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was like my first red pill moment. But just from the culture perspective of things, all the hypocrisy, I would say it was mainly for me about control. I continuously, consistently felt controlled by leftists. And it was very reminiscent of abusive relationships that I've had with women in the past. And I've spoken about this publicly as well. If you look, and I made a video about it too, if you look at the characteristics of abusive relationships, we're talking about emotional, verbal, and I guess in sometimes, some ways physical too, like they're burning down buildings and stuff, beating people up for having different beliefs. But majority of what I'm talking about was verbal harassment and emotional abuse, mental abuse. If you look at a chart, like from like psychology.com or something, it dictates, it was like a pie chart, and it was all the different ways you can be emotionally manipulated and abused. And and it was all talking about relationships, like romantic relationships.
Interesting.
But every single piece of the pie also made sense with leftists and how my relationship felt with people on the left.
Hmm.
So it was, whether it was they were trying to control your finances, if they disagreed with you, they try to get you fired from your job, holding money over your head, you know, saying who you could or could not follow, who you could and could not be friends with. That's another abusive tactic. Relationships, right? An abusive boyfriend or girlfriends. I don't want you hanging out with them. I don't like them. Like, who the hell are you to tell me who to hang out with, type of thing? It doesn't affect you,
Hmm.
right? That's an abusive, segregating somebody so that you can control them is abusive. Every single one of these things was happening. And I started realizing that about 3 years ago, I would say.
Hmm.
And then I just started, I got to the point where I spoke to my friend Tim Pool and my friend Sydney, who's from Australia. And I was like, I need help. I don't know what to do, but I can't like allow myself to be treated this way anymore. And my friend Sydney's like, you need to make a video about leaving. Like, you're done with them. You don't have to come to the right. People are going to assume that, but you need to make a video. And I was like, I need help writing it. And they helped me write it. And it went viral. And I was like, okay, well, that's done.
I'm sure.
And I just sat back and I hoped for the best. I really didn't know what was going to happen. I really didn't.
Hmm.
And little by little, Dave Rubin found me, Ben Shapiro found me, Steven Crowder reached out to me. I had an interview with him maybe a day after the video went viral. I was actually in Australia, and I had to wake up at like 4 in the morning to do
Oh.
a video where he is in Dallas. Yeah, that's where I'm at now. Now it's like I would say I'm probably a moderate classic liberal, but I lean conservative on certain issues.
Hmm.
But it's more, for me, it's more about the controlling aspect.
Okay.
Because if there's a lot of control on the right, I'm not for that either, right?
I,
So
okay.
it's like live and let live. Leave me alone.
Very, very interesting.
I
Now,
hope that wasn't like a long drawn out.
no, this is great. We just want to hear your story and your experience. Now, you still describe yourself, as far as I'm aware, as a part of the LGBTQ community, but I see a lot of people, as I was just searching through, giving critique to you. Is it because of
Right.
the critique and newer positions that you've taken, or is there something else going on that I missed?
I would say that's definitely a big part of it. But I would say it was starting before I even became like publicly out about supporting President Trump and being more conservative with politics. Um, it started when I began criticizing, I would say, the trans movement, because it went from 0 to 100 with that movement very quick, and I was not for it. I was very lenient in the beginning and understanding, and I still am with certain issues in the trans community. But as anybody that is not a leftist or is a leftist even knows, even though they might not be like completely fully self-aware of it, once you go against the grain, you're going to be outcast forever, right?
Mm.
So once I started critiquing, and the goalposts are constantly shifting, right? To further and further to the left. So no matter what you do, it's like you can't be perfect until they, bring the next social justice cause your way and you have to agree with it. Then you're perfect again. So I stopped agreeing with some of the things that they were saying, and I was like, no, this doesn't make sense because this and this. And sorry, my phone started ringing. Spam. And I started disagreeing with them, and they obviously were not happy because they could no longer control me. That's when it first started. But then when I became public about promoting, believing in President Trump and what he stood for, and actually did my research, that just created a whole new influx of hate. But also it brought me a lot of support, which I didn't know was going to happen. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're a grifter." It's like, how could I have known? Honestly, you don't know what's going to happen when you do those types of things. You're hoping for the best, of course, but you don't know.
Now, this is a question just purely out of curiosity. How many would you say within the LGBTQ community would vote Republican versus Democrat, support Trump or not? And I'm not asking you to make a case for him. I would have
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
assumptions
Just
looking in,
statistic wise, what I think.
but would it be a I would think it'd just be a significant minority. But is that
I
true?
think well, I think it's more people every day that are being red pilled,
Oh,
that are seeing.
okay.
I mean, just speaking from a minority's perspective. Like there was a video yesterday of Hillary Clinton in New York, walking from her hotel or walking to her hotel to her car or whatever, and people were booing her. Did you see this video? It went viral.
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
And there was, if you look at the video, every single person in that video that was booing her was a minority.
Hmm.
They were either black, Hispanic. There was like I would say mostly Hispanic people. It looked like maybe one white person, a few women, and I think that says a lot. Like when New Yorkers that are minorities are pissed at you, or when gay people are pissed at you, you
Okay.
effed up. Like you messed up,
Okay.
because we're usually very lenient because we know the struggle, right?
Okay.
So when we're being taken advantage of, when we find that out,
Interesting.
is not good for you.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned some of your concern with the trans movement. I have some concern about it. And I've always thought it's interesting that you have Christians and lesbians coming from a very different perspective, but
Agreeing on
share
things.
concerns about
Yes.
some of the trans movement. So tell me, why did you part ways at that point? What were some of the things that you saw that you're like, time out, I can't go with this movement?
What were some of the things? I mean, could I know I can't curse on the channel, but I'm gonna say the word penis because I don't know
That's
how
fine.
else to say it. But when they started telling me that in order to be a proper lesbian, I had to accept trans women as real women in the biological sense, meaning that I would have to like date a trans woman and give oral sex to a person with a penis. Like I was just like, no, that's like not what lesbian means to me. Like it can be, it's fine if that's what it means to you. Again, the libertarian stance, but don't tell me how to live my life. Don't tell me what it means for me because it doesn't mean that. Well, a trans woman is a woman. A woman sometimes has a penis, and if you're a lesbian, you like women. And it's like, well, yeah, but lesbians don't like all women. I'm not attracted to every single woman that walks down the street. And trans women are trans women. Like that's a very important, prefix, is that the word,
Sure.
descriptor. Yeah, that comes into play. Like why is the word trans there? Because there's something biologically different about them. And I would say that was like my main thing. And then after that it just started snowballing from there. Now they're saying that, biological women should be competing in sports against biological males, which again I was for, and I still am for in certain cases. Like if you're somebody like Jazz Jennings, who did not I think, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, did not experience any male puberty. Like they went on hormones and they went on puberty blockers, and testosterone blockers rather, like very very early. Somebody like that, like Jazz, in my opinion, she has no biological advantage against a biological female,
Mm.
because she doesn't have that testosterone in her body in the way a biological male would if he went through male puberty. But so I was for it in the beginning, and I even had an interview with Fallon Fox, who's a trans woman MMA fighter or boxer, or I think she's MMA. And at the time, like science always changes, right? At the time, science, this was like 5 years ago, science said that she
Yeah.
didn't have an advantage. Now it says she does. So my stance on that has changed, which is crazy, right? It's crazy to just look at science and be like, wow, I can think differently now. No, if you're a leftist, it's whatever you believe, no matter what the science says.
Mm. Now, you
Yeah.
had some concerns. You did a video recently on sports and trans athletes competing in sports.
Yeah.
I did an entire interview with a professor who did his doctoral dissertation on the biological differences between
Yeah.
men and women. He actually said there's 6,000 differences from bone
Oh, I believe
structure
it.
to blood circulation to, testosterone.
Lung size, hand size,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. All that stuff
Mhm.
adds up. So that's
Oh
one of
yeah.
my concerns, just out of fairness and having my wife who competed in college sports and got a scholarship. Like there's a lot of things in my daughter. What's the
Hmm.
heart of your concern? Is it the same, or do you have any other concern you would add to that with the sports
I
question?
think no. I think that's my main concern. I think it's that we're taking away trophies, scholarships, world records from females, right?
Mm.
Just yesterday, Leah Thomas, for a trans woman, that a swimmer from University of Pennsylvania. I just filmed this before our interview. She, and I say she because I respect people's gender identities, but I can also understand biological differences, right? People are going to get on me for saying she, but it's like, no, I'm going to respect the person, but also recognize reality. Like you can do both.
Mm.
So she won the 500-meter, I guess, freestyle. I don't know anything about swimming, freestyle, whatever. And it was interesting to watch because I think the pendulum is starting to shift. Well, it's been starting to shift more to the right. It's starting to swing back hard the other way because we went way too far left. The University of Pennsylvania posted the video of Leah winning. I'm assuming thinking they were going to get like a lot of praise for it, like, wow, yes, trans women in sports, yes, trans rights. That's not what happened on Twitter. It was really interesting. People were like not having it. uh Majority of people were like, congratulations to, I think the girl's name was Catherine, maybe, who is like the rightful owner, the rightful winner. She came in second place, but she was really the first place winner. A lot of people were critiquing Leah Thomas, obviously, for being, I think she was like 460th ranked in men's, and then she was like on, HRT for a year or 2 years, and now she's like first place in women's, and it's like, that doesn't add up, does it? Like,
Mm.
so she was getting a lot of hate, which I don't think hate is the answer, but I think critique is the answer. And we have to sit back and be like, well, why are sports sex segregated in the first place? Not everything is sex segregated, right?
That's right.
But certain things are. So the question is why? Why? Because of safety, because of biological advantages. That's the only reason why. We have to make it as fair as possible.
Love it. I think I can agree. I can agree
Hmm.
wholeheartedly with you on
Yeah.
that. Let's talk about it a little bit. Let's shift, and we may come back to some of these ideas, but you've done some videos on Jesus. You've shared some spiritual ideas. I think my audience in particular is going to find this fascinating. But before we dive into some of the videos where you talked about, was Jesus transgender, was
Yeah.
Jesus non-binary, maybe tell us just a little bit of your spiritual beliefs. Do you believe in God? How'd you come about having those beliefs?
I believe that I believe in God, but not as in God, like as in the sky, or as in separate from us. I think that we are all God. We are all a part of the universe. We're not in the universe. We're a part of the universe. We're an intrinsic part of it. And I was raised Catholic, similar to you probably. I was raised Catholic, Italian Catholic, which is like it's a whole different order of guilt. But um, I was raised Catholic. I was raised a block up the block from my Catholic church, And I haven't been to a church like that except for like a wedding, maybe since I was 12. I stopped believing in it because at the time I didn't understand that I was gay, but like I didn't understand what it meant, but I knew that I was different and I knew that I didn't feel welcome. So I just, it felt, for me, it just naturally felt safer to distance myself from a place that I didn't feel accepted in, right?
Mm,
But looking back, even if I felt accepted now, it's still a lot of the teachings I don't believe in. I do believe in what Jesus taught, but not a lot of what, I guess not a lot of not the way people interpret it. Maybe that's what I'm trying to
mm,
say. I think Jesus. I mean, we can't prove that he's real, or maybe we can. I don't know. But regardless, that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is, regardless if he was, I don't think he was the son of God. I think that Jesus is a son of God. Like what he was trying to, what I believe he was trying to say, and I watched a video on this, and now it's my new belief as well,
okay.
was that we're all children of God, right? We are all, like, he is a son of God. I'm a daughter of God. You're a son. Like we all come from the source. I think Jesus was a highly, highly, highly spiritual person, and I think he was definitely a leader and a preacher, and huge, a huge importance in any spiritual teachings. He was he was highly conscious and aware of the fact that we're souls in a body, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I believe. And I came into spirituality, and spirituality for me, I think means, I mean, it's a lot of different sayings, but I think for me, it just means knowing that you're more than just a brain and a body,
Mm,
right? You're a soul
okay.
living a human experience. You're a heap of energy living a human experience. And I also believe in that our souls come here to learn different lessons. And I think that whatever life lesson that you, whatever lesson you see consistently in your life is probably what you're here to learn. And you'll see it because that's what you signed up for, right? You signed up to learn self-esteem, and you'll constantly be put in situations in your life where you have to learn that lesson, and it's going to keep repeating itself until you learn it.
Mm,
That's I would say that's the majority of my, not the majority of my spiritual beliefs, but that's where I came into it actually when my dad got sick, and I needed,
oh, wow.
yeah, I came into it when my dad got sick, and a spiritual advisor told me to read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, who's a spiritual teacher. I think he's Austrian.
Yeah, familiar with it.
He's great. And it talks about how we live in our minds, and that's actually not, that's not real life, because our minds, the only place you can live is in the present moment, in the now, like the power of now. And if you're living in the future or the past, you're only living in your mind. The future and the past don't exist. Like, one of the ways the spiritual advisor is tell us, like, sure, it exists. You could look at a picture, whatever, whatever. He's like, really? It exists? Show it to me. And I was like, oh, I can't show it to you, like, physically. It doesn't exist. It's a mental thing. It's a time, whatever. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
That's fine.
that's, I feel like you could cut this up because I'm just like blabbering, but
No, no, you're doing great. Just trying to get a sense of your. So if
that's, yeah, it's difficult to talk about in like 5 minutes. Like, there's a lot of things that I believe in.
no, that's fine. If I could ask one more about Jesus before we get to your videos.
Yeah, yeah,
Sounds like you said Jesus was a son of God in the way that we are. So if I think
yes.
about that, when it comes to like Jesus walking on water, healing the blind, rising from the dead,
Mm,
either we're all capable of doing those things if we tap into the power, or those would have to be explained away as corruption in the text, legends that seeped in,
right, right, right.
or aren't really true. Is that something you're like, I'm not even sure where I land, haven't really thought it through, or where would you go with that question? Because clearly he made claims about his identity and did things that stand apart from what arguably anybody else has done. If those
I
te-
mean, if those things were true, then I wouldn't, like, if there was a way to prove that 100% those things happened, then I would say, okay, that's great. What does that tell us about God then?
mm,
Like, what would that mean? Like, what type of human was this Jesus person? I don't think that the fact that he rose from the dead is, or like cured the blind, is even remotely important in my opinion. I think the main messages are the fact that he was about healing people, and about helping people, and about loving people. who cares if he rose from the dead? But like, I get it. A lot of people need that. Wow, he could do something that nobody else can to respect him and believe in him. Like, I get that that's why if that's not actually what happened, I get why people would have written that in the Bible, right? Because you need
Mm.
something of magnificence to believe in something, bigger than you, so to speak. But the thing is, I believe that we are already bigger than we think we are. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah,
Trying to
yeah.
understand where you're coming from. It, as much as you're comfortable, you can just deflect this and we can move on. But obviously,
Yeah.
a Catholic family, go in the direction that you've gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of those dynamics, like maybe how your family responded. And I ask because I deal with a lot of kids who will experience same sex attraction. They try to navigate this in their Christian families. And I'm trying to
Mhm.
help parents love on their kids while
Right,
holding
right.
on to what they believe is true. So I'm just curious your experience there.
I came out when I was 19, and my parents were 100% fine with it. My mom had laughed. My brother came out 5 minutes after I came out. We're both gay,
Interesting.
and yeah, and then honestly, I've never felt like after I came out, I was fine. I felt I was scared before doing it, not because I thought my parents and family wouldn't accept me. I knew that they would. I was more that I was having a problem accepting myself for some reason. Looking back, how dumb that was. One of the things my dad actually told me after I came out to him, and I had said to, I basically said to him I was scared, I was accepting myself, and he said to me, "Why would God create you this way just to damn you?" And I was like, "Whew." I was like, "That's it. That's what I needed to hear." If you're created in God's image, or regardless, we're proven at this point scientifically, it's proven that we cannot fix this. We cannot change this. So why would God or the higher power or the universe create something, you know, just to shame it, if that makes sense? And I guess a Christian faith would say, well, it's temptation, maybe, or original. Like, I really don't know what they would say at this point. I haven't been involved in the religion in so long, but that's my understanding of what their stance would be on it. I think, right?
Do you want to know what I think, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you can tell me what you think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Scripturally, we have creation, Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. Genesis
Hmm.
chapter 3 would be what we call the fall, and that all of us are broken in different fashions, not living and being the way God wants us to. So,
Okay.
yes, God made every single person. Your race is irrelevant to being made in God's image. Your
Hmm.
biological sex is irrelevant to this. Your socioeconomic status, level of intelligence, in the womb, out of the womb. Every single human being is made in God's image. But when
Right.
sin entered into the world, we've also been broken. And that manifests itself in very, very different
Different
ways.
ways. Okay.
So
Okay, I could see that. I could see people believing in that.
it's taking both those into consideration for a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of Christian theology. So really part of the Christian message is that, like Jesus says in Mark 7 or Paul in Romans 3, it's like we are all miserable sinners. We have infinite value because we're made in God's image, but our hearts are broken, turn against the Lord, and we need to repent. So it's not the kind of message to me that's like, hey, let's invent a message that makes you feel good, because it basically says all of us have sinned and turned against God.
Right, right, right. And as long as I feel like as long as it's not targeting a specific group of people, it's not something that I'm going to condemn. You know what I mean? If like the message is like, okay, we're all sinners and we can all do better, I think that's a great message. I don't agree with what's considered a sin
Sure,
necessarily,
sure.
but I think it's good that we're treating everybody equally. I could agree with that.
Well, that is definitely a biblical message that either
Yeah,
Greek or Jew, male nor female,
right. And
all are
that's
one in
yeah, I
Christ.
get I
That we
100%
are
get behind that.
we
Yeah.
are all sinners in that sense. Do you think, I'm curious, sometimes when I speak with people who call themselves Christians and gay, and then others who aren't Christians, they'll make a
Mhm.
distinction. Some will say, Sean, it's your theology that you hold and your position about marriage that is hateful in itself. You cannot be loving towards me unless you change your theology. Other people say, look, you hold this historic view about the nature of marriage, but as long as you are gracious and you're kind and you treat me a certain fashion, you can still be loving. So, would the heart of your concern be the position that the church holds, or the manner in which the church holds it, or both?
The manner in which they hold it. Because as far as I'm concerned, if I don't like what a church is saying, I can go to another church. You know what I mean? I can go to a religion or just make my own religion up. Not like not that I'm like, "Oh, I believe in the sky." I mean, you can, but what I'm saying is you can pick apart different religions and what works best for you, which is what I do, right? I think that's helpful. I don't think that a church should be able to get into legal issues. That's where I have an issue with. If somebody's religious beliefs are messing with my legal rights, then I'm gonna have an issue with it.
Okay.
If you want to believe what you want to believe in, this is America, go for it. If you want to believe that I'm a sinner and I'm gonna die and I'm gonna go to hell, okay. Like you're allowed to believe that. Like who the hell am I? Who the hell am I to tell you what to believe in? I don't think it's a healthy belief, but that's on you to figure out. Not
Okay.
my monkey, not my circus, as we say. My thing is, if your religion is impeding, like I said, is impeding on my human rights to live, what's the Declaration of Independence say? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If you're impeding on those things, then I'm gonna have a big issue with it. But I don't think most religions these days do, unless it's Islam and you're in the Middle East. Let's be real, but nobody wants to talk about that.
I've seen you
But
talk.
yeah, I mean, I
I've,
don't have I don't have issues with Catholics or Christians. I really don't. Like, I think the majority of them don't care at this point, and if somebody does, I feel like the worst thing that I've heard is, well, I just think a man and woman should get married, not a woman and a woman. It's like, okay, and so don't get married to a woman if you're a woman. Like, that's your belief and that's your right, but just don't impede mine.
mm,
And we're talking about morality here. It's not the same as saying that, oh, well, I'm a pedophile and I can't help my attraction to kids, which is also true. This is something that these people can't help. Morally, that's a different argument, right? Morally, I can't stand by that. But to me, being gay, it's always been a woman attracted to a woman, a man attracted to a man. There's nothing morally, in my opinion, wrong with that. Two consenting adults. So and that goes back to ancient Rome.
sure.
There was like homosexuals all over the place. I'm sure before then, cavemen. I'm sure if they couldn't find a girl, I don't
So,
know.
so what would your take be if you have really a live and let live approach of when like questions of religious liberty come up, like a baker or a florist who says, "I'll serve gay people, but I have concern with baking a cake that
Mhm.
celebrates a same-sex union because."
I agree with you. I agree with your stance on that. I think I don't think I would have understood it beforehand until I became a fan of Trump and understanding of what freedom actually means. Um, I am personally, like, if this happened in my real life, I'd be like, bye. I'm gonna just go to I'm just gonna go to a different baker.
Sure.
Like that. It's really it would be that simple for me. But I can understand if somebody lives in the middle of nowhere and then that's the only baker that they have and they want to celebrate their gay wedding, whatever. I can understand that they would get upset, but I still so the ups. It's not wrong that they're getting upset, but it's also not wrong of the person who doesn't want to be forced to do something they don't believe in.
Mm,
It would be the same as if you told somebody, like, if I own a bakery and you wanted to come in my bakery and you wanted a cake, you were you were an actual white supremacist and wanted like a cake, you were going to a KKK rally and wanted me to write I love Nazis on a cake, and I was like, nah, I'm not really cool. How is that any different? Talking about coming from the law specifically, there's not much difference there, right? You're telling me to do something I don't want to do. I shouldn't be forced to do it. Just like masking and vaccines, like my body, my choice. This is my expression, my choice. My business, my choice. Um, I don't agree with it, obviously, because I'm like, okay, you want to celebrate your gay wedding, go ahead, make a cake. But I don't think people should be forced, obviously.
I think you and I are going to have a lot in common on that one, and especially at the baker in Colorado. There, if I remember correctly, it was like a 5-minute walk. I don't even think it was a drive to another bakery that would make the cake designed for the same sex union.
Right.
But this gay couple was like, no, this cake is going to. And he was sued by the Colorado, what is it, like the Commission of Human Rights in Colorado, one sued again, one at the Supreme Court, and like a third time on a trans
Wow.
issue. What do you think motivates people to
Wait, who
not?
won? The gay couple or the baker?
So the baker was sued 3 times by a gay, not the same exact couple. There
Oh,
were
okay.
different cases against him, and last I checked, he's in the middle of the third. Won the first two. It's dragged on for about a decade,
So the
and
baker won the first two.
the baker won the first two. Yes,
Interesting. Okay.
but I did an entire show interviewing him, and he was like, "Look, I don't do cakes for Halloween because of my convictions. I have concern with Halloween. I wouldn't like it's
Right.
not just targeting this issue." And he would serve gay people. He goes, he views his making cakes as an artistic expression of his beliefs. That's how he views it.
That's fine, and that's fine. To me, he has that right. I think he has that right. I'm not gonna, just because somebody wants me to say something on my YouTube channel because they believe in something doesn't mean I have to say it. I shouldn't be forced to say it. That's my business and my my self expression. How is it any different than his business and his self expression?
So what do you think motivates somebody to just not say, "Okay, I'll walk 5 minutes down the road, fine." Like that's
Because because two things. I think one, they want attention and they want the validation, right, from the world. Oh yes, you're doing human rights. You're doing good things for human rights and blah blah blah. Um, but also, of course, they want to believe that they are a part of the change. The truth is, and I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody about trans rights. The gay community was making way more progress back like 10, 15 years ago, when we were just like, we want to live amongst you, we don't want to be treated special, right? And now it's gotten to the point where we're all, not obviously not all of us, not me, most of us are wanting to be treated special, and then people have an issue with it, right? It's swung too far to the left, and now you have people using bug and bug self pronouns. And it's like, people are not on board with that, kid. Like, you can't do that. You can't force people to love you. It's just like not how it works. You have to internalize that, and learn that, okay, if I'm trying to gain this love for myself from the outside world, that's not what love for yourself is. That's outside love. Does that make sense? I know
no,
I'm saying that a lot,
yeah,
but
no, no, no,
I say, in my head it makes sense, and then I say it, and
no.
I
You're
script my videos, so I can't just like go off the cusp and just.
that's awesome. I have to get to a couple videos. I didn't expect this, but you've done at least 2 videos that I saw recently about Jesus in particular, and I think
Jesus,
this
yeah,
is going to really interest my audience. You had one
yeah,
on, was Jesus transgender or woke? Talk about the
yeah.
point that you're making and why you hold it.
Um, I think it was a few non-binary activists on TikTok, I believe. This was a few months ago, that were saying, "Oh, Jesus was non-binary because he was born of a virgin birth, which means he technically had no male chromosomes because he had no Y. You get the
Mm,
Y chromosome from your dad, and but he was presenting male and presenting as a man, therefore he was non-binary." And other people were like, "Oh, he was non-binary because he had long hair and did feminine things like wash people's feet." And I'm like, get out! Like, stop making everything about being non-binary or gender, whatever. Jesus was literally, if he was real, we're just saying, he was a guy, an Israeli guy from the Middle East, who was very spiritually actually woke, very conscious, very spiritually conscious, very sweet, very smart, very good natured, and he was very enlightened. And he wanted to spread that message to the world, and people thought he was crazy, and then they killed him. Like, that's the only important thing. It's not important that he was like non-binary and like wash people's feet. That's not the message that you're supposed to get from Jesus, in my opinion. You're supposed to get,
mm.
this is how you love somebody. This man was good at it. Learn from it. That's it. There's a whole book about it, but that's the main message throughout the book, right?
it is interesting to me. It says something about the significance of Jesus, at least culturally speaking, that people
Hmm.
feel the need to say, we're going to advance our movement by arguing that Jesus was non binary, Jesus was transgender. That's
Yeah.
behind it, right? They're just trying to
I
make
mean,
him
it's the most popular book in the world, right? Isn't the Bible still the most popular book in the world?
most commonly sold, most translated,
Right.
most,
Right. Right.
yeah, across the board. It's not even
Right.
close to a second one.
Right. So it makes sense that they're latching onto that. Like they already latched onto the gay movement, right? Because these a lot of these non-binary people aren't even same-sex attracted. So they're latching onto different cultural movements, whether it's LGBT or Black Lives Matter or even like we were just talking about religious movements, or religious. You have to remember a lot of this woke stuff is like a new type of religion. So
Mm.
it's not the word of God anymore. I call it the word of woke because that's what it is for these people. They don't have most people these days, Gen Z, a lot of them aren't religious and they need to find a purpose and they're falling into this moral superiority complex, which honestly is what a lot of religion is. Not that it should be, but a lot of it is, right? Like I guess specifically I would say Hasidic Judaism is kind of like that. Like they believe that, from what I understand, they believe that they are the chosen ones, right? That they're morally superior, that they're God's chosen people. I don't think that's healthy. And I think that's a similar mindset to the people that are involved with this woke, you know, this wokeness sweeping across the nation. Well, I guess not even sweeping across the world now.
It,
Canada, it's gone to the UK. Yeah,
it's interesting to hear you call it religion. John McWhorter has a
it
recent
is.
called woke racism. And his case is that there's certain prophets who speak for wokeism. There's rights,
Mhm.
rights, and practices. There's certain kind of sin that you cannot do. There's a way of
Yep.
gaining virtue in
Yep.
movement. And his
Yep.
argument is that it really functions like a religion, like he
It
says,
does.
especially as our culture gets less and less religious. Is that the
One
heart of
hundred
your
percent.
criticism of woke? Because I notice you have a few videos about this, or is there something else just about wokeism that just gives you pause?
Oh, that's definitely the majority of it.
Hmm.
The fact that it's acting like a religion and that it's controlling, it's trying to control people. It's trying to control people and it's abusive. That's the main issue. And the second issue is that it's a total lack of self-awareness and it's putting the, what would the word be? The onus on everyone else to make you feel self-esteem and self-love and validation. Everybody else has to appease me. And that's not something that I stand by. It's not a belief I stand by. I don't think it's healthy for anybody to live their life that way, to expect everybody else to cater to them.
So what are you trying to accomplish on your YouTube channel? You've done it 12 years. Obviously, there's a business angle to it, which is totally fine. If you invest your
Yeah,
time
of course.
into something, you should have a business angle to it. But is it educating people? Is it entertaining? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish through your YouTube channel?
I wouldn't say hoping. I think I am accomplishing it. Um, and I don't mean that in like
Yeah, no, no, no,
sexual
like
way.
that.
It's like no, I've been doing this for a long time. No, I think that my main goal has always been self love. And when I see a lack of that, either in myself or in others or in a movement, I want to have conversations about that because there is such a lack of love in this world at the moment.
Mm,
Such a lack of love for others and of love for a love for people, love for themselves.
mm,
That's always been my message from the beginning, whether that was me talking about dating somebody or relationships or sexuality and now culture, how you're supposed to interact with other people. All of it's about love. That's all that everything always comes down to.
mm. Fair, fair enough. Do you find yourself, you've talked about, you have Catholic roots, you've done a couple videos on Jesus. Do you find yourself going back saying, I'm going to read the Gospels and explore what Jesus said, or you just feel like you have enough sense of what he believed that
I have
checked
no.
out.
I took a. I mean, I read the Bible in like elementary school and junior high school, whatever it was, up until I was 12, and then I took a New Testament class in college. So I have read the New Testament. I don't remember much of it, but I did take a class, so I knew I studied it. I studied the Dead Sea Scrolls. So
Oh,
people want to hate on me and say, "Oh, you don't even read it." No, I did. I took a class in college. It was an elective. You need like 10 electives to graduate, or whatever it was. So I was like, let me just do something different, take a Bible class. But it was more of like a critique of the words, right? Not of like, you must believe in this. Um, Obviously, it was a private art school. It was more like, oh, what can we learn from this, and what is it, and was it the art of it too, right? Because he was writing, and it was also the all the Dead Sea Scrolls and the beautiful. I mean, you ever see them? They're gorgeous.
yeah, I actually just did a show
Yeah.
last week on an expert
Hmm.
on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
something
beautiful.
I've explored, and I think it's super fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, all those documents are just beautifully preserved. Well, a lot of them. And some of them got destroyed in Alexandria, like the old stuff. But um, what was the original question? Oh, what do I see myself looking back? I think I see myself becoming more and more spiritual, and if Jesus's statements and beliefs align with that, then I'll look into it more.
Mm.
But I don't think I look to Jesus for spirituality. I think I look into spirituality and different teachers like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson, who ran for president recently. She didn't win, obviously, but she wasn't the candidate, but she was one of the nominees in the Democratic Party. And she's insanely spiritual. She's got a ton of great books to read. And then from that, I take what I believe in, and then I look at other religions, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of something similar, and maybe I relate to that. I think that's the way to do it. Like you take a little from each thing because they're all very similar, right? At
I,
the core. Well,
well,
most of them. I
yeah,
wouldn't say
I would
Islam is that
actually,
simple.
I would actually argue they're similar on the edges, but at the core, very, very different.
That's
Just the
possible.
part of like whether there's a personal God or not. In Buddhism, there's not a personal monotheistic God. Judaism,
Right.
Christianity, Islam, there is. What
True.
to be human is hugely different in Buddhism versus in Christianity. What's wrong with the world? Obviously, in Buddhism, what's wrong with the world is in a sense that we have these desires, and desires create suffering. Eightfold Path alleviates it, but in Christianity, it's like the heart. In Islam, we're not submitted. So I think there's similarities with the teachings of Jesus and Buddha on the edges, but at the heart, there's huge differences about the kind of world we live in, the afterlife, what's wrong with the world.
That's
Uh,
true. Yeah, yeah. I've only dove into Catholicism and Buddhism, and I could say
mm,
I guess yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying. Like on the surface, I could see that they're very similar, but yeah, that makes sense to me. I haven't dove into any of the other. I mean, I grew up around Hasidic Jewish people, so I know their religion's nothing like mine.
sure.
Um, just by the way they were acting, but which is interesting, right? Because it's like both followers of Jesus. So at the time, anyway, when I was a kid, and the interpretations were so ridiculously different. It's kind of funny.
Mm.
Um, but that's the human experience. So I guess it makes we shouldn't be surprised by that anymore. Everybody's going to experience things and take it in and push it back out differently based on their own life experiences or what they're told to believe.
So just some kind of final questions for you. Can Christians like myself, conservative, and someone like yourself, part of the LGBTQ community, can we be friends? And I guess I don't really mean you and me be friends. Can Christians and gay people who are not Christians be genuine friends, even if they differ on huge issues like the nature of marriage, and maybe even differ over what should be legal or not legal? Is that enough to divide to say we can only be friends on, surface friends, or can there be real friendships across those differences? And if so, what would it take for that kind of friendship to take place?
I would say that's going to differ for everybody, unfortunately. For me, the line's drawn for everybody differently. For me, the line would be drawn at like the legal stuff, right? I mean, if you were to, if somebody that were Christian were to say legally that they think gay people should be able to, you know, go through conversion therapy still, I'd be like, it's proven not to work. Like there's scientific evidence. It's just torture. Like I don't agree with torturing people and legally being able to do so. So like I don't think I could be somebody's friend that believed in that. But if somebody was just like, I don't believe in gay marriage, I'd be like, good for you. Then don't get gay married. Like that's it. That's all it has to be to me.
Mm.
When it becomes something that's physically, you know, affecting somebody and it's not just hurting my feelings, that's when I draw the line. Not that it would hurt my feelings, but it would hurt other people's feelings. That's when I would draw the line, I think.
Okay. What if it was something like, one of the difficulties with conversion therapy is so many things are thrown in this bucket. For example, like I have a friend with same sex attraction, married to a woman, and he says just counseling and prayer and certain spiritual disciplines just help me stay giving my affections and love towards my spouse.
Right.
Is that discipline okay? Because some would say, well, that's conversion therapy.
Well, it depends on what this person like. Is he putting himself in this situation, or is somebody forcing
Yeah,
it upon him?
he's
And
choosing
that's
to
fine.
do it.
And
So you
that's
have
fine.
a
I
problem
don't have anything wrong with
with
it.
people, they choose to do it. So if
Yeah,
somebody was
that's all on
saying, hey, we
him.
should have a law that prevents any Christian counselors from working with people who choose this voluntarily, you would probably put the line there and say, I'm not sure the government should overreach, even if I don't think they should live that way. I don't want the government overreaching in any area, telling somebody else how to live. That's where you would
Correct.
presume.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you want my personal opinion, I don't think that that's going to change your friend's same sex attraction. I think it's either in you or not. Um, pun intended in this case. But I think if it to me, it sounds like he's more worried about cheating than having a same sex attraction. Right? He's more worried about acting on it than actually the idea of being same sex attracted. Does that make sense? Fine.
Do you have any final questions just for me or thoughts? If you don't, that's totally fine. But anything that you're like, during this conversation, I'd be interested in asking Christian professor on anything.
I don't have any questions at the moment. I guess a good question that my audience might enjoy is what would you do if one of your kids came out to you as being gay?
Here's exactly what I would say. I would look at my son or daughter in the eyes and I would say, thank you so much for sharing with me. I can only imagine how much time and effort and probably fear it took to tell your dad. So the fact that in this moment you're sharing with me, thank you for trusting me with this. Know that I love you no matter what. That my love for you has nothing to do with what relationship you get into or don't get into. Your religious beliefs, any behavior, however you choose or end up just seeing yourself in this world, I love you and we are going to work through this together. That's exactly what I would say to my son or daughter if they
For
came up.
me, that's perfect. Honestly, that's it. My, I mean, what I think doesn't necessarily matter. It's your life. It's your kid's life. But I think because I have because I have an audience, my opinion does hold weight.
Mm.
And I think coming from that, I think I would say I'm very proud of you. I think that's a
Oh,
perfect way to handle it. I really do. Yeah.
well, I appreciate that. That's one of the
Mhm.
reasons I wanted to have you on. Is sometimes there's so much Christians have assumptions, throw bombs at the LGBTQ community. It comes back, and there's not a lot of listening. There's not a lot of trying
Right.
to find common ground amidst our differences, and frankly, just showing care and love for one another. And I got the impression you're willing to listen, open to things, and that
Yep.
maybe we could model this in a small way for both communities. So
I hope so. Yeah. I have a friend, Matthew Vines, his name is.
yeah,
You should look at, oh, you know who he is?
we
If
had
not,
a
you should look him up.
Matthew and I had an extensive public conversation about two or
Awesome.
three years ago on the
Yeah.
Bible and LGBTQ
Good. Good.
relationships. And
Yeah. I interviewed him like 6, 7 years ago when he first came out with his book. Was it God and the Gay Christian, I think it was
that's
called?
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I interviewed him a long time ago. What a sweet man. Um, So yeah, I'm not. I was gonna say you should interview him if you haven't already. I'm glad you already found him, which makes sense because what is he like the one of five people that do that kind of thing?
There's a growing few.
Yeah, yeah.
Matthew and I have we've built a friendship, even though we differ pretty significantly over what the Bible says. There's
Hmm.
a mutual respect and care there.
Good.
So yeah, don't want to take any more of your time, but really appreciate you coming on. And I'll before I finish up here, I want to say goodbye and thanks for coming on. But really appreciate it. And I guess last thing I'll say to my audience is if some of your audience comes and looks at my videos, they might be like, okay, time out, wait a minute, this guy's crazy. If my audience goes and looks at your video, they might think, oh my goodness, this lady's crazy. I would just ask people on both sides. I think we've shown a spirit of charity and willingness to listen to each other, positive conversation. Go check out the different YouTube channels, maybe with a different sense of openness than you had before. And that's a win if that happens. So
I love that, and I think that's absolutely true.
thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.